Hi, I'm Brando Reyna. I'm a portfolio manager here with Novari Capital.
I'm Bill Staten. I'm Brando's partner, and we're happy to bring you some thoughts about the market and the economy, which we hope will make you feel better, and which we also hope are on target, right, Brando?
yeah. It's nice if it's both. So.
Yeah, we always like to start off with something a little bit lighthearted to get you in a sense of humor, because it's a fact that when you're in a lighthearted mood, you absorb information better, even if it's serious. And so Brando and I were talking before we came in here about he's been dreaming about his super yacht and where he's going to live one day. He's trying to decide whether it will be in Nice, Portofino, or Monaco. Those are three of his top choices. So I just wanted to tell Brando he's not exactly sure how much it's going to cost, but a 300-foot yacht I found out from the New York Times, typical 300-foot long yacht, cost about $1 million a foot. $300 million yacht, 300 feet long, cost about $1 million a foot. And of course, depending on the finishings, Brando, you have extravagant taste. It could cost a lot more than that. And then that's just to start. Then you as an owner can expect to spend an additional 10% or so and another $30 million or so per year on upkeep to maintain the vessel. Then docking fees, listen to this, docking fees alone can run about $30,000 a week.
Oh my goodness.
A week when all your travels around the world.
Yeah.
And then, depending on how far you go, it could run up to $1 million a year just on fuel. Just on fuel.
That's crazy. That is a ton of money.
So, Brando, I'm thinking maybe instead of 300 feet, you want to cut it back to 200 feet.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit. You know, it's a good thing I have you who's agreed to help take care of all the cleaning. Yeah. Well, no, I was thinking like to help cook and clean and do all that stuff, because I mean that doesn't even include the
swab
staff.
the deck.
Yeah, swab the deck. Yeah. Did they put in there how much it would cost? Like none of those numbers even figure in the crew.
Food or anything like that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
You talk about money to burn. That's money to burn.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. Well, get started with our first slide, I guess.
Absolutely. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So when Bill and I talked about putting the slides together for this month, one of the things that we thought would be helpful is this slide that comes out of J.P. Morgan. They do a guide to the market. It's a great deck. In one of the slides in particular, it shows the historical calendar year returns going back to 1980. And what you see is roughly a little over 3/4 of the time, returns are positive. They're typically up. Sometimes they're down. They're not often down huge every now and then. I mean, we were both in 2008 and
9.
Yeah.
Those were bad years.
Yeah, so you have some years, but overall, a majority of the returns are positive.
Yeah, 32 of the last 42 years have been up. Total return.
Yeah. Now that's even that's despite even on average an intra-year low of 14%. Mm-hmm. And I think that's interesting for our listeners, because the volatility of being down 15%, that is commonplace in the history of stock market returns going back to the 80s and probably even before then.
Yeah, Brando, we looked at that very closely today, and you often, even in bull market up years, you have a bear market during the bull market year.
Yeah, yeah.
And most recently, we were looking at 2020. The market was down more than 30%, but closed up 16% for the year. That's a 50% swing.
Yeah.
A huge swing.
Yeah.
Way down before it went up.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and I think it kind of gets to the heart of another chart we'll come up with a little bit later, but like the emotional side of investing is strong. I mean, there's people react strongly one way or the other, and we've talked about this in the past numerous times, how the media tries to scare the bejesus out of you, right? It attracts eyeballs and it gets viewership and it sells ads, but it doesn't really do anything positive in terms of investing money. Mm-hmm. So we thought an interesting statistic, given that returns are negative so far this year, but in the grand scheme of things, keeping it in context of the long game, this is part of the regular market cycle.
And who knows? I mean, the market could still be up before year's end. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's happened before.
Who knows? So, the next slide we had, Bill found from one of the newsletters that he subscribes to, and it goes to the calendar year returns during an election cycle.
Yeah, the third year of a presidential election cycle, which begins at the end of this month.
Yeah.
September 30th to September 30th of next year. The third best year it's the third best year of the 4-year presidential cycle, as you can see on the attached chart, and it's by far the best year of the 4 years. And and we have accurate data going all the way back to 1950, which is about as long as I've been around. And the other interesting thing about this is, Brando, that the upcoming period from September 30th through March 31 of next year is also the best for 6-month returns.
Oh, really?
So we not only are looking at upcoming based on history, the best year upcoming, but the best 6 months.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think normally when a new president comes in and he or she does whatever damage needs to be done to impose new taxes or slash budgets or whatever.
Yeah.
And then people find out who they're dealing with, and then once that takes place, then they sort of get used to how bad it is or how good it is or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they've made their adjustments, and then they sort of the next 2 years they just think, well, it's got to be better than what it has been. At least that's my feeling. That may be wrong, but that's my interpretation of it.
It'd be interesting because we've talked about I think we've had a chart maybe a year or 2 years ago where we broke out performance returns by which political party controlled which branches of government.
Yes.
Remember, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but what we found was basically when government is split, you have no one party is in charge.
You have the best returns.
You have the best returns.
That's right.
Right, and what I kind of think of, and I'm just off the cuff here, is like a lot of that I think has to do with nothing's really going to get done. So the playing field, the rules are set. Nothing's going to change, and businesses can go about their business knowing that this is pretty much what to expect, and they can make decisions.
Or another way to look at it is maybe we'll have fewer negative surprises.
Yeah. I almost wonder if, like, the third year of an election cycle, if part of that mindset is politicians are really involved in campaigning and they're not pushing as much new legislation or new bills or anything like that.
Could be.
So
Could be.
Anyway,
we're coming into what historically has been a very, very strong year for stocks overall.
Yeah.
So hopefully it will be that way this time.
Yeah.
Not a forecast, it's just based on history.
Yeah. Toes and fingers crossed.
Yep.
So the last slide we have is, I think, one of the best slides that we have for the presentation, and it goes over consumer confidence. And Bill, you found this in the same slide deck that I found the first chart in.
Right, the J.P. Morgan slide.
Yeah, and it goes back to the 70s, and this is the University of Michigan Consumer Confidence Sentiment Index. And basically, if you think about it, the numbers are high when everybody feels good, and when people feel bad in 2008, 2009, the numbers, they drop off quite a bit. And I think the interesting thing about this, Bill, is when everybody's feeling good, that's when the returns are least. And it's when everybody's feeling bad and their outlook is just super negative, that's when the returns are the best.
And typically, Brando, that means that people have sold and built cash positions, and they're fearful, and that's the kind of environment where the opportunities generally are the greatest and are the least risky. Even though psychologically you may think the risk is greatest, it's the least risky.
Yeah. I mean, I know we've talked about this in the past too, where all the negative all the negative items that could happen are already priced into the market. It's like saying, well, you bought a bunch of bananas at a price of knowing that, half of them are going to be bad by the time you go to eat them. But if you're getting it priced so low where all of the bananas are getting bad, you're still going to get some value out of half of them being
Yeah,
good.
if you go to a used car lot and you're worried about the car you're buying getting flat tires and all the tires are already flat, that's something you don't have to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's already there.
Yeah. In the top left of the chart, you should see the average returns for the top 8 peaks and the bottom 8 troughs, and the performance numbers are pretty different, stark contrast to each other. So, we're definitely at one of the troughs, like you said earlier. We don't have a forecast, but hopefully, if history holds, this is a good time to be in.
Going back for that long period of time, it's a lot of. At least history's on our side for a favorable market environment going forward.
Yeah.
And there's one more piece to add on top of this. I was born in 1947, and this data goes back to 1950. And this holds true for the past 10 bear markets, not including the one we just came out of. But when the stock market, the S&P 500, declines by more than 20% and then rallies by more than 20%. The previous 10 times that's happened, Brando, we have never gone back and exceeded the low.
Oh, really?
Whatever the low was when the market went down 20% or more, we never went back and exceeded that low.
Okay.
So this year would mark the 11th time that the market declined more than 20%, the S&P 500, and rallied back more than 50% of the loss. I said it wrong. Rallied back more than 50% of the loss.
Okay. Gotcha.
So assuming history continues, we won't go back to the low that we hit earlier this year.
Got ya.
If history continues to hold.
Yeah.
And that would be another positive going forward. We might go back toward that low, but based on history since 1950, we won't exceed it. And that would be another reason to be optimistic among well-chosen stocks.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. Just kind of thinking about it forward-looking, looking at how emotions have kind of reacted in the past historically, and
Right.
in a good spot. So
Exactly.
good deal.
So that's all we have to share. And Brando has a great closing story for
I
us.
think this is actually my first story that I brought. You usually have a plethora of stories.
I got 13 I wanted to share, but you're taking the lead today.
I appreciate it. So I got this last night on a Sunday. We're recording on a Monday from a blog a service that I subscribe to, Farnham Street. They do a great job. It's on Better Thinking, but this comes from them, and this was part of their story. A giant ship engine failed. The ship's owners tried one expert after another, but none of them could figure but how to fix the engine. Then they brought in an old man who had been fixing ships since he was a young boy. He carried a large bag of tools with him, and when he arrived, he immediately went to work. He inspected the engine very carefully, top to bottom. 2 of the ship's owners were there, watching this man, hoping he would know what to do. After looking things over, the old man reached into his bag and pulled out a small hammer. He gently tapped something. Instantly, the engine lurched into life. He carefully put his hammer away. The engine was fixed. A week later, the owners received a bill from the old man for $10,000. What? The owners exclaimed. He hardly did anything. So they wrote the old man a note saying, please send us an itemized bill. The man sent a bill that read, tapping with a hammer, $2. Knowing where to tap, $9,998. But I think that is the reason I brought this story up is I think it's a point that we want to emphasize to our listeners is we try to keep turnover low in the portfolio. We do that, taxes and a couple other reasons. However, there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes.
Yes, that you don't see.
Yeah, there's a ton of work where we're talking to companies and trying to set up meetings, going through balance sheets, annual report. I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, the amount of stocks that you and I kick around in 1 week.
And that we discard.
Yeah, and that we absolutely, yeah, that we look at it and it just doesn't have it, and we may come back to it months later or not at all. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting story.
Yeah, well, it really is, and I think knowing where to strike, and that's really apropos. Knowing quality and hopefully knowing value means a lot, and it takes a lot of work to be able to discern that on behalf of our clients.
Yeah.
So with that, we conclude, and we hope that story was meaningful. We hope some of the advice we've shared with you today has been meaningful, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of September. Thank you.